Once upon a time there were two families of birds, the blue jays and the red robins, who lived on either side of a river. They flourished in their joint happiness and well-being. They each had beautiful houses up in the trees with interconnected paths between them. They were so happy and they lived such plentiful lives until one day a massive storm swept through the forest. The bird houses shook with every gust. The blue jays and the red robins huddled in their homes, clinging on for dear life. Then a bolt of lightning struck down and hit the blue jays' side of the river, and all their houses fell out of the trees. The red robins could only watch as their friends fell down and down. The blue jays were stranded, huddling in the cold on the ground, for they could not fly in the harsh winds. They tried to call for help from the red robins, but the robins said they had problems of their own and could not help them. The red robins shut their doors and did not help their fellow birds on the ground. The blue jays rebuilt their homes, but it took them many months. Distrust and anger grew quickly between the blue jays and the red robins. Years later, a young blue jay was born by the name of Betty Blue. This is where our story begins. She was a very sweet girl, but she often got herself into trouble.
Betty Blue, it's time for dinner.
Coming, Mama.
What in the world have you been doing?
Just playing in the river with Robbie Red.
How many times have I told you not to be seen with the red robins? You know the story. They have never done anything good for us, so we must not ever do anything good for them. Now go wash up, fast.
The next day, Betty met with Robbie Red in the river, where they always played, but this time Betty had a sad look on her face.
Hey, Betty, you want to skip stones?
No, Robbie. My mama says I can't play with you anymore.
But why?
It's because my mama doesn't like you, Red Robins, so she doesn't let me play with you.
Well, that's just stupid. We could still be friends, though, right?
Sure, but as long as you don't tell anyone, okay?
Okay.
Betty and Robbie played and splashed in the river all day until they saw ominous dark clouds in the distance. As they each left for home, they felt the wind pick up, and rain began to fall faster and faster. The storm rushed into the forest with a monstrous roar. The trees shook and branches snapped. Thunder boomed in the distance, creating panic for the birds. The birds clambered into their homes, hoping the lightning would not strike them. Betty swooped into her house, looking for her mother, who she had thought she had seen through the window. "Mama!" cried Betty, but she could barely hear her own voice over the sound of the storm. Betty had to keep looking for her mother, but as soon as she was about to go back out into the storm, her mother flew through the open door and into the house.
You must not go out in the storm, my child. I want you to stay calm and...
Crack! A lightning bolt crashed through the trees and struck the red robins' houses. The houses fell out of the trees and towards the ground.
Mama, what was that? Was that the Red Robins?
I don't know, but we need to stay inside.
The door swung open with a bang, and Robbie Red flew through the door.
Robbie, what are you doing here?
I was flying back up to my home when the storm picked me up, and it blew me away and over to here.
Well, you can't go back outside into the storm. Stay here until the storm is over.
For the rest of the evening, Mama, Betty, and Robbie sat by the fire telling stories. Mama was surprised at how much she liked Robbie. When the storm finally was over, a meeting was held about the fate of the red robins. Most of the blue jays thought that the red robins should not get any help, but Betty spoke about how the fight between the blue jays and the red robins had gone on for too long, and it had to stop. Robbie and his mom stood beside her. She talked about the fun she had had with him, and how her mother became Robbie's friend last night. Her mother, teary-eyed, spoke too. So others confessed they had friends on the other side. She had started something amazing. Her story and the outpouring of support convinced the blue jays that they had to rebuild the red robins' homes, and they all lived happily ever after.